Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another evening of Northshire Live. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight for a wonderful evening. You probably noticed as you're coming in that this evening's presentation is being recorded for future broadcast on our YouTube channel. However, don't worry, we have the settings such that only those of us who are unmuted and speaking will appear in that recording, so you can have your camera on if you want, and you will not be recorded for posterity. In light of that, anything that you want to say, you can just type into the chat box throughout the evening. Please just go ahead and do that at any point. And then before Dafydd introduce our wonderful poet guest this evening, I just wanted to offer a word of thanks. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight, and we really appreciate your incredible loyalty and support over the last almost 2 years now. It's been a rough time in the world of bookselling. And we really couldn't have kept our doors open without the incredible loyalty and support that we've seen. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your ongoing support of the Northshire. Without further ado, Dafydd, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest tonight?
Thank you so much, Rachel. We are delighted to welcome you all to a very special poetry reading here tonight in honor of the new book, PHILOMATH by Devon Walker-Figueroa. We're joined tonight by a host of wonderful poets. Stephanie Burt, who is running behind, she'll join us soon, Taylor Johnson, Shane McCrae, and Mark Wunderlich. I'll introduce them all to you now, and then hand them over the mic, and they'll pass things on. Well, first off, her first book, PHILOMATH, was selected for the 2020 National Poetry Series by Sally Keith. She's a graduate of Bennington College and the Iowa Writers Workshop. Her writing has appeared in The Nation, Poetry, Poets and Writers, American Poetry Review, Ziziva, and elsewhere. Devon is a recipient of the 2018 New England Review's Emerging Writer Award, the 2021 Poetry Society of America's Lucille Medwick Award, and she is the current Jill Davis Fellow in Fiction at NYU. And she's a former Northshire bookseller. Stephanie Burt, who will be joining us shortly, is a poet, a literary critic, and professor of poetry at Harvard University. She's the co-editor of Poetry for the Nation and a recipient of a 2016 Guggenheim. Called one of the most influential poetry critics of her generation, she's published several collections of poetry and books of criticism, most recently, Don't Read Poetry, a book about how to read poems. Next up, Taylor Johnson is the author of the collection Inheritance. They have received fellowships and scholarships from Callaloo, Cave Canem, Lambda Literary, Tin House, the Vermont Studio Center, Yaddo, and Breadloaf, among others. In 2017, they received the Larry Neal Writers Award, and their first collection is Inheritance, which is available at the link here in the chat. Shane McCrae is the author of The Inland Language of My Captor, which is a finalist for the National Book Award, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and the William Carlos Williams Award, and The Animal Too Big to Kill, which won the 2014 Lexi Rudnitsky Editor's Choice Award. He is the recipient of a Whiting Writers Award and a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship. His most recent book and seventh collection is Sometimes I Have Suffered. And finally, we're delighted to welcome back to our screens Mark Wunderlich, who joined us earlier this fall for one of the most memorable poetry readings I've attended either virtually or in person. He is the author of 4 acclaimed collections of poetry, most recently, The God of Nothingness. Please join me in welcoming to Northshire these wonderful poets and congratulating Devon on the publication of PHILOMATH. Devon, take us away.
Hi, everyone. First off, thank you, Northshire, for trusting me with attending to your science and poetry sections at the Manchester location in 2014 and 2015. You're a true literary home for me, so it's really special to have you hosting this event tonight. And I want to thank my fellow readers, Mark and Shane and Taylor and Stephanie, mentors and heroes to me whose work really keeps the practice of poetry vital and urgent. And I'm so grateful for your work and to have you here tonight. I did a weird thing where I made like a little cento from like lines from your poems from these books, which if you don't have them, you should get them. Inheritance, Sometimes I Never Suffered, Advice from the Lights, God of Nothingness. They will improve your life. So here's my little cento thing. And the lines are from Shane's The Tree of Knowledge, 5th grade time capsule from Stephanie Burt, My Night with Jeffrey Dahmer by Mark Wunderlich, and Black Existential Exegesis by Taylor Johnson. His job, he knew it had to do with seeing their expected ceremonious farewells, his questions, the questions of any curious man talking to a farmer's son, Grace is our odd crowd. All right, thank you. And I will just read, some of the poems are a little bit long in my book, so I'm just gonna read one of them actually, and it's called Afterbirth. All right. It was originally written in Ottava Rima, and then I kind of just ended up making changes, so it's not in form strictly, but the form got metabolized. So here we go. Afterbirth. Reed, who's got one strike left before he gets life, tells me afterbirth is what the cougars are after. Lambing season, he says, plus placenta's a delicacy to a cat. I try to explain how intent they were, how their intentions appeared to involve me, but Reed won't hear a word. My mother takes me at my word and won't let me leave the house, so I learn to regret my story, sit indoors for weeks watching for hunters only to find what's hunted, the gray diggers interring green walnuts at the feet of the tree they fall from. Now, all I can think of is blood, how we first feed on it without knowing we feed on it, or that it possesses a plan all its own. Every girl I know has started, nicknamed it Florence or Flo or the red badge of courage. It'll be years for me. When a doctor finally says, you've fallen so far off the growth chart, I'm worried you won't find your way back. I'm 14 and can still go out shirtless without causing a stir. Eat more butter, he says, but I don't yet believe what I eat will help me hate my body any less. Reed doesn't hate his kids. He loves them too much is the story. People tell me to avoid him, but I don't. His flocks graze the fields I drag my shadow over, and I have nothing better to do than gaze at interminable feeding, mumbling exodus under my breath, some passage about bearing false witness. And I think I know by now that knowing involves the senses turning a touch licentious. My parents haven't known each other in years, and no one wants to know me either. A tree falls in the woods, consensus leaves us cold, etc. Green eggs and ham. I really dislike that kid's book with all its I would nots and could nots on boats and in woods, all its reds and its greens intermingled muck of inks you should never swallow. A doctor hands me a copy, says, go enjoy, and pulls a plastic curtain between us. I'm 3 and can't yet read any word on my own, but God. He reaches his hand gloved green inside my mother and says, what about this weather we are having? Just between us, I warn the story's star not to touch its plate, but in the end, it'll do what the good doctor has scripted. I throw the book. My mother stops, singing beneath a stream of steaming water, a red-black mass to hissing at her feet. Find your father, she commands. So I run through yellow meadows yelling his name, which the hills give back to me, though he can't hear them from the other side of this state. On the other side of this state, my mother finds her first horse. It is 1980, decade of the single wide and no children in the picture. Just a mare called Chianti, who dies 1 year before I'm born. Her heart, size of a child's globe, fails while foaling, something involving a decayed length of intestine and great pain. My parents take great pains to save her, but the foal will lose his mother the instant the air enters his chest. In Egyptian hieroglyphs, I can be rendered as a single reed and meadow as a row of 3 reeds bound by a flat line of horizon. I know little, even now, though enough to say my name and know it's not mine, but just some inadvertent testament to my mother's love of horses and good breeding. In an ancient 17 magazine, an English girl of means straddles a dappled purebred bearing my name. 17, the age I am, when my interior starts giving up, the way it's meant to, with blood, and thanks only to pregnant mares held captive, their urine stolen for the green tablets I made to swallow. And though I feel like a martyr outgrowing martyrdom when it happens, a sacrifice of sorts still takes place inside me. I am the first to admit I'm kind, of a poser sometimes, like when I convince my friend Anne I've started, when in fact I've only lifted my mother's lipstick to tint my underpants the right shade of red. Sure, I've begun to forget my mother's writing as it appears in Arabian horse world, some piece on giving birth and up and tricking a strange mare into caring for a foal, not hers, by painting it up, by daubing it down in the afterbirth of her still born. What more could one ask for? My mother once rubbed moonshine on my gums to numb the pain, appearing inside me, moonshine, the name, given the foal, dressed in after birth and therefore breathing. Thank you. And let's see, is Stephanie? Oh, hi, Stephanie. I think you're next on the reading order if you're ready. Welcome.
Sorry. Okay, now you can hear me. I had to get some teenagers where they needed to go. I hope you got all the communication. Like, PHILOMATH it's such a good book to think about and listen to, and just it's such an honor to be part of one of the launch events for it. And I hope everybody here who doesn't have one has like ordered one by the end of the event. That's so good. So I'm gonna read a couple of poems from the book that's going to be out next year. It's called We Are Mermaids. And do we want 10 minutes of reading? Is that about right? Devon, 10 minutes? Anyone? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm still playing with the sequence, but right now we're starting with the title poem, We Are Mermaids. The salt of the ocean is always the salt of tears. Melancholy, but at the right dilution or concentration, life-giving. It has been there since before the beginning of tragedy, when what would become us was just trying to get through the day. We know the consistent waves as they ride fortune's helical gears, sacrificing their poise for their careers need not be the only mode of living. Look down, the thermophiles sip at the fumaroles, whose sulfur steam would kill a human being. They love it here. And the mottled, diffident, ray-finned fish known as zoarchids or eel pout, all shrugs and S-curves choose to nose along the floor of the rough world. They are both predators and prey, with gills and wide-set eyes instead of a face. You don't have to be useful. You are not required to come up with something to say. You can spend your life benthic or brackish, subsisting and even thriving where a fingertip comes away saline and still refreshing, exploring the estuary, the submerged lip and congeries of overlapping shores, on the green-black water, the harbor, the bay. You can live with your doubt. That's why it's yours. Some of us are going to be okay. few more. It's such an honor to be here celebrating Devon's work.
It's such an honor to have you here, Stephanie. Thank you.
Sorry I couldn't be on time. So this is very meta. This is a poem about one of the more transformative poetry readings that I've done as a, I guess, touring band. And Devon, I apologize if you've heard it before, which is absolutely possible. It's stuck under H.G. Wells's Experiment and Autobiography. There we go. It's 700 pages long. Sorry, my poem is not 700 pages long. H.G. Wells's autobiography is 700 pages long. This poem, which is not 700 pages long, is called Miami. Not the sense of standing alone in front of a microphone, but the adjustments of playing along with a more experienced band. Not the fear of representing an establishment, but of representing it badly, of being inundated and then shipped home. The scallops whose breathing tubes pop up above the receding salt water through the overlaps of sand. The fear you'll sink like a skipped stone. The past, as it grows away from you, is thickening. The young reader in the too often washed Avengers t-shirt with the collar cut out had asked, how do you deal with the fear of existing? The insubstantial feeling that came to you then, the vertigo and the quickening. So, two more seem right? Okay. One's a bit long. So this one has some music recommendations. It's pretty new. My 1994. I didn't know, but I knew. I took off the dress Kay offered and apologized for my striped boxers. I called myself a kid in a candy store when I was a teen in a lingerie store. I wanted to move to a place I knew secondhand from TV, to Topshop, Boots, postcodes in England land. I had mixed up the opposite of nostalgia, a longing to be someplace I could never call home, with my wish to become someone new. There's a wasp between my window pane and its wire mesh screen. She wants to get out. She hovers and dives towards some way, not knowing there can be no way unless someone unlocks the glass and lifts the window itself and lets the wasp into the room. I wanted to write a book, and they told everybody I knew that I wanted to write a book about the softest pop groups I could find. The boys wore striped sailor shirts and they sang like girls, and the girls wore striped sailor dresses and sang like every first kiss was simultaneously the holy grail and no big deal, which was true and is true. The field mice, heavenly, blue boy, I love them all. I love them all. The demand that we shed our previous selves is garbage. We are not wasps and need not leave our shells behind. I had to move to England to see them where they lived. They said that love could break a boy's heart, Keith Girdler sang. I think there's no such thing. I wore the sailor shirts, but not the floppy collars. My then best friend gave me bad advice about passing, telling me women dress for one another, never for ourselves. My then girlfriend needed to date a boy. I was glad to help her find one. I didn't know, but I knew. Maybe everyone did. The wasp rams the glass, black and gold. I thought I wanted to free myself from my body, which was not possible. Land on this windowsill with me. And oh, it's really like just such an honor to be reading with Devon. And you know, I saw some of these poems that are in PHILOMATH in slightly earlier versions, I think. So there's a whole bunch of poems in We Are Mermaids that are named after punctuation because punctuation's fun and a lot of punctuation marks are trans and mean things. And there were a whole bunch of poems set in Ireland where I was briefly 2 years ago. And it cut almost all the Irish poems out of it because they weren't that good. But this one stayed. Question mark, Sligo Town. And you might want to know that the model is the name of the art museum in Sligo, which is also a place that has annual celebrations of William Butler Yeats. And that travel, well, I think everything else is in the poem, actually. We're good. Question mark. The small child at a traveler's halting site in American trailer park chose to arrange 24 slabs of cracked asphalt, each about the size of a house cat, so that they make a straight path, then veer up to the property line in the shape of a giant crumbling question mark. Anything, given time, can become a fine art. Anything can turn over or decline or break or come together or simply change. Put that in your model museum. Put that in your vault. Thank you. It's time for the next reader, right?
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's such an honor to have you here. As I said at the beginning, just having my mentors and my peers who are so dear to my heart here. This is just a reading I've been really looking forward to. So thank you for being here. And yes, you did read some of the early versions. I think our next reader up is Taylor.
Yeah.
Taylor.
Hey,
Yes.
Stephanie, it's good to see you in the car. Hope you're doing good.
I am. It's good to see you.
Yeah. Devon, thank you again for inviting me. It's an honor to celebrate your book. Yeah, I'm just gonna read a few poems, and it's always great to hear you read. And I hope that everyone has purchased a copy of the book because, it's incredible. Cool. Since I quit the internet service, I'm thinking more about the transitive properties in books, the words, the palimpsest of images accruing in my brain, but more immediately, the book in my hand, the cover worn at one end from sweat and gripping it when it comes close. Close as in when I stood up, let one deep exhale when I came to the lines of all fearless happiness from which reaches my life I sing and find it underlined by a beloved stranger. It's like turning the record over, knowing you're hearing what I'm hearing, easing up on the edge of the chair. It's like we're holding hands now at the edge of a white silence from which we are to make a music of our being here, of being moved, wherein our music complements and holds close each other's sound in the wet room of the tree I met you in. Nothing is said about the water or the fearless trees angled toward and against the light that did fall on me, made much of me, light that sings through me, so I'm singing. States of decline. The room is dying honey and lemon rind, soured light. My grandmother sits in her chair, sweetening into the blue velvet. Domestic declension is the window that never opens, the paint peeling, dusting the sill, and inhaled. It is an American love she lives in. My grandmother, rigored to televangelists and infomercials, losing the use of her legs, needing to be turned like a mattress. No one is coming for her. The dog is asleep in the yard. Her husband, obedient to the grease and garlic in the cast iron, salting her death in the wind house. Semiotics. In a dream, I am my father riding through the Thai countryside with a banjo playing itself in the passenger seat, strapped in like a baby. The light falling so thick it makes a brass bowl of the valley, the light articulating green to the day. I want to sing it real, what I saw with his eyes, like a river sings to an ocean until the river is a cloud. Sing the song a cloud sings to a mountain. Sing it true and liquid the light falling. I resonate, I green, I steam ring and undo my face. I let the new light undo my face. I become my father's distance in the temple, the glinting Buddha head casting gold between the floor and his frayed shadow. His fallow voice repeats the mantra, leave, 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 as he passes glass beads between his fingers. My father rocks side to side in prayer. I become that groove. I weep as my father in devotion and anger. We write the same letter to my mother. You are, you did, you. I become my father as speed on a highway, the tape deck playing associations. Father is to fathomed as phantom is to what? The answers draw a sentence across the windshield as crude lines. On my banjo driving, trying to read the blueprint my father left. I think it was his voice. I'll just read one more. I want to hear Shane and Mark read. Thank you again, Devon. Consider the deer. Consider the deer who, when I say deer, doesn't know whether or not I mean a single one, though there were two dead and shiny with maggots on the side of the highway, or a group of them, always a bit lost in the divided woods. Blame our need to reach or leave each other faster. Consider the deer that I saw dead on the shoulder midday, mid-autumn, whose neck in post-rigor mortis pining broke itself again so that the head could face the woods setting itself alight. Oh, that I could turn and live again, the deer might say, recalling that one poet singing to himself, ruining the grass. Consider that the deer, when called, won't come alone, purely due to linguistic vagary, who, like me, resist the gesture toward singularity. Call my name and the whole woods rise up inside me. I is a plural state of being. Consider the multitude before my footfall, how I'm able to crane my neck back, see only myself. Thanks, Devon. Thank you all for listening. Next is Shane McCrae.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for that reading. It's wonderful. And thank you, everybody at Northshire, and thank you, especially Devon, for having me. Okay, I'm just going to read poems, I guess. Right after the January 6 riots, I wrote this kind of long poem called Hex. And when it was done, I wanted to write more of it. So then I wrote some poems called After Hex, and this is After Hex 1. Oh, I should say, the reason this starts the way it does is because Hex started with this line, one's opportunities to be unhappy are. So, After Hex 1. One's opportunities to be unhappy are dynamic, ever expanding. A Ford Mustang chasing the sun as it sprints panicked to the western limit, which was the morning you first didn't think of the riot. And for weeks afterward, and following what once had seemed, and anybody would have said so, seemed to have been a sequence of events in time, and only to the intelligentsia then hidden, now they scurry from one nimbus to another down the block until they disappear in darkness, then they reappear in light, then disappear again in darkness. And then finally, beneath the next streetlight, they're gone. They disappear in light, to whom what seemed to you a sequence was a sphere of time, expanding in a space with limits and with walls at its limits, in which objects are attacks the space pays to what authority? The sphere of the riot for what seemed like weeks, but it was only minutes, The sphere was conveyed, a polished gem from hand to hand, one representative to the next, one party to the other, in the weeks of their competitive expressions of concern, in the minutes of those weeks, rolling a golden coin across scarred knuckles, a magician or a criminal, but both. The coin, a sphere in the space between two hands, a coin in the hand. Eventually, like bullets in America, the riot passes through our heads and we forget the riot, everything. What once seemed strange to you becomes your heart, American, your heart's blood strange to you, hidden in you, the truest part of you, unknowable, a minotaur of the hidden God who is not you, the God not even of your own heart. These poems are all from, I guess, my next two books. This is after my grandparents kidnapped me, they moved to a new development. The only scenes I know are scenes my mother's parents thought to take pictures of. Me in the ditch, my mother's father in the yard before the fence was built, before the lawn was fitted to the earth's face like a face after a mauling. He is posing like a hunter in the dirt. He grips a hoe and kneels in the corpse called everywhere. A neighborhood is coming. Where an armed man kneels and grins, that man will build a house. This poem, the first line has the word GIF as in GIF in it, and I always feel like I need to say so because I'm afraid people will think I'm saying gift. This is in the house from which I was kidnapped. The pale blinds rise and fall, a gift forever. The blinds move on their own. At first, my father stands with the string between his fingers, first and middle, pulling even after it tears into his fingers, tears the first and middle skin, him pulling, letting go, his blood staining the length of the looped string nearest him. He pulls the string for years. Eventually, he backs away from the window into the room. He doesn't turn. Now he watches from a shadow in the room for a small child to be returned to him. I see him watching from deeper in the shadow. Whenever I look into his eyes, the shadow grows the way a child grows. This is the second to last poem. It's called Explaining My Appearance in Certain Pictures. In pictures now, I do not smile and didn't then. I would laugh if I was being tickled, and sometimes one, my mother's mother, would tickle me, and the other would take the picture, my mother's father. And so sometimes I'm not smiling, but I'm laughing, my eyes closed and my mouth open, almost like I'm screaming, but I'm laughing. When I was a child, in pictures with my kidnappers, with one, my mother's mother, always her. I'm sitting most often in her lap, her arms around my blurred waist. She has me on Ritalin, and the trick is wait until the laughing stops. As the mouth closes, you can take the smile. So I said these were all from my next two books, but this one isn't, I guess. I guess it's my most recent poem. I wrote it 2 days ago. It's called The Loneliness of the Kidnapped Child. To the beach at anywhere beaches, but might have been in Oregon, unless my grandparents weren't yet showing me in public, unless they were afraid I would remember they had kidnapped me and say so to a stranger, so and so and so, and at whom and for how long then would they have to smile to get free? How whitely nod and wriggle for a security guard, pour how far beneath them the last smile on earth? Or to the beach at the Gulf of Mexico, some several fewer thousand miles from Austin, and where the water looked unnatural colored to me who hadn't then before seen water not bound on all sides, penned, caught, and blue, kept clean, the influx there prevented of influences from other waters, said to, but said by whom who weren't themselves corrupted, said to be water just the same as that which even I, a child, could see, looked cleaner and was blue. To the beach at the Gulf of Mexico, I was 4, was 5, was 6, that child hallucination now. My mother's parents, it was summer, took me there. And almost none of it, most of it gone now. I remember almost none of it, not even myself, a dream now. I remember, except the crying seagulls at the window of the hotel room in which we stayed, from which I don't remember leaving once, except to go back home. The crying seagulls crying at our window, at no other crying, until I threw them bread. My mother's mother had packed a loaf of bread. I tore the loaf apart as fast as I could tear it, each brown slice apart, and threw the pieces to the seagulls. Who was standing next to me? Which kidnapper? Smiling, a hallucination, helping with the loaf, but will not let me leave the room, not even leave with them, not hand in hand with them down to the water, to watch the seagulls there that wouldn't cry so hungrily there, and some would hover quiet above the waves, and some would settle on the waves, and none would know my face. Thank you. And Mark is next.
Wow, thank you, everyone. And it's really exciting to be joining this group of readers here and also to be celebrating the publication of PHILOMATH by Devon. And I was just remembering when I first met you, Devon, at Bennington College. I don't even know how many years ago when you rolled into my office, and you had been a professional ballerina and you played the harp and you spoke Swahili. And I was, like, where did she come from? Where is this person who's been delivered to, who wants to learn how to write poetry sort of arrive here? So anyway, it is so gratifying to have you here celebrating your publication, and it's a fantastic moment for me, and so wonderful to be hearing these new poems and by my fellow readers. So thanks, everybody. I'm just going to read 3 from God of Nothingness, and this first one is actually one for a person who several of the people reading tonight knew well. And this poem is called Gone is Gone, and it's for Lucy Brock-Broido. I was there at the edge of never, of once been, bearing the night's hide stretched across the night sky, awake with myself, disappointing myself, armed, legged, and torsoed in the bed, my head occupied by enemy forces, mind not lost entire, but wandering off the marked path ill-advisedly. This March, Lucy upped and died, and the funny show of her smoky-throated world began to fade. I didn't know how much of me was made by her, but now I know that this spooky art in which we staple a thing to our best sketch of a thing was done under her direction. And here I am at 4 a.m. scratching a green pen over a notebook bound in red leather in October. It's too warm for a fire. She'd hate that. And the cats appear here only as apparitions I glimpse sleeping in a chair. Then, wohin bist du entschwunden? I wise up, know their likenesses are only inked on my shoulder's skin, their chipped ash poured in twin cinerary jars downstairs. Gone is gone, said the goose to the shrunken boy in the mean-spirited Swedish children's book I love. I shouldn't be writing this at this age or any other. She mothered a part of me that needed that, lit a spirit lantern to spin shapes inside my obituary head, even though I'm nearly certain now she's dead. Shanty. No one remembers what became of the people in the house, now swaybacked in the marsh. Not the mice whispering and tunneled in the couch, not the snapping turtle armored on a log, retracting his hard beak into wrinkled folds like foreskin. Not my mother who visited the shanty once as a nurse, noting the packed dirt floor, the walls pasted up in newsprint. They burnt waste oil in a barrel stove they got free from a garage, dipped their water from a spring now greened with cress. Artist Kyle Holtz knew something of the wife, but couldn't think, what was she called to home? When I was small, I heard roosters crowing from their yard and think I rode a school bus with the girl, but now I couldn't say for sure. Bill Went taught me to trap muskrats in that swamp, staking a conibear in the muddy muskrat runs with brush. I pulled their plush furred bodies from the ice, sold them for cash money to the fur man in the spring. How long will I keep telling stories just like this? Dirt floors and trap lines and a shack abandoned in a swamp. The vividness of that world is fading like my father's addled mind. Poverty is not poetry, this I know. But these pictures are what's left of childhood, and now all my male relatives are gone, though lost and half remembering my father living on. This next poem, I'll end with this one. It has a line in it in German, and which just means he died, he is dead, he has died. Proposition. That the smell of cows drifting in the open window is indeed that of a living beast. That I too am a living beast. That the body I possess is inhabited only by me. That my body is neither at rest nor occupied by dramatic motion. That I am, by my best account, fully alive. That the room in which I am seated is in Germany, in a town called Worpswede. That a poet I admire once lived here too, though he is long since dead. Rilke wrote that I gently wipe away the look of suffered injustice, sometimes hinders the pure motion of spirits a little. That there are such things as spirits. That we are born suffering, but that we are not meant to suffer. That the wind blows and the birches outside my window sing a little. And that cooing and chucking of the dove I hear is also a kind of song. That the difference between the living and the dead is mostly one of conjugation. Starb, ist gestorben, ein gestorbenes Mensch. That what we make when we speak is a kind of music, but disjointed. And that music seeks a unity that our speech does not possess. Once I felt as though I was dead, but now the reasons for that feeling baffle me. I marvel at what it is to feel the sun on my skin. Burnish is the word that comes into my head. Burnished by the sun, as if my torso was a copper shield. That my torso is a kind of shield, protecting the inside from the outside, though we all know we are penetrable in many ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. How fantastic this has been. What a wonderful space you all have made. We've got a little bit of time left, and I thought the best way to spend that would be if we asked Devon to read another poem. Devon, could you read another poem from your book?
Certainly. And I also just want to thank everyone again, my mentors. And Mark, thank you so much. I have to say a special thanks to you because I don't think I would have gone to grad school if you hadn't very actively encouraged me to do so. And that's where I got the majority of this book written. So thank you. And thank you, Shane, for helping me edit the title poem. And thank you, Taylor and Stephanie, for I met both of you at Bread Loaf, and that experience was life-changing, and I'm just so grateful to have you in my life. And on that note, I'll read one more poem, or let's see, I'll read the last poem in the book maybe, or the last two, they're kind of short. So this one's called If She Stands Still, She Is Dancing. And it's one of those like late poems that didn't find a home anywhere, so it just lives in the book. So I'll read this one. If she stands still, she is dancing. Everything is here in this furrowed veil. A girl the world might call a blemish lying in dust, her slip lit up with late day sun. She make-believes she's never been here before, that luck has left her in this stream. She knows in this field, sorry. She knows the stream is close and running low, its surface animating crane flies, their numb forms fluttering for miles. The light finds a way through her lids, stains the hour orange, and the scent of dry pine stays so present, it starts to disappear. All the beauty she will ever need has visited itself upon her. Drag her by her braided hair into a room that smells of soap. Heaven will go with her. Hold her until stillness is a vow. Whatever she does next is a dance. And then the last poem in the book is called Gallowed Bee. The nearest land feels nowhere near, and no one is to blame. We burn the year's news in the meadow, in the mine, till the crosswords and the funnies wilt to winter kill. I trace the day an epitaph in ash. Hallowed be thy games. Every story is ashamed to be true. My father's now a widower, and no one is to blame. My sister doesn't laugh, plots to live on land turned tame, where the soil's kissed with concrete yields no wine. It's all the same to me if we winnow, if we win. I tell myself the story that I'll visit. Distant cisterns, let their sallow walls win me over, lift my low life and lowly frame of mind. My father gets fined for burning out of season, says he doesn't get why. So the days go slow and I climb a pulsing fence that stops. No bucks nor does observe the neighbors' piglets wallow in their loam. Still, the world is wide if the hymnals hold true, and every beast has a mind to get loose from a valley fallowing toward fowl. My sister braids my waist-length mane, says this place is lame. I try to tell her no one is to blame, but the sky is so hollow, it swallows every name. Thank you. Thank you, Dafydd, for organizing, and Rachel. It's such a pleasure to be hosted by Northshire. I spent a lot of good times there writing the little recommendation cards that would live on the shelves, and had a few saucy ones for the romance section too. Always pinned under another bookseller's name. Don't tell anyone, but.
Thank you so much for celebrating your book with us this evening. It's always exciting for us to get to watch one of our booksellers go out into the world with their own work. And so it's a real thrill to get to be part of this and to get to hear you and your wonderful guests tonight. It's been really a treat. Thank you, audience, for being here. You can find books by all of these poets at northshire.com, and I put the link in the chat a few times. And please come back to another Northshire event another time soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.